think about what you can do either today or this week to push us in the direction of a more just and equitable and inclusive society. And whatever you choose to do, just know that is enough, but just do something.
You're listening to the Legal Mastermind Podcast with your hosts, Ryan Klein and Chase Williams, the go-to podcast for learning from the experts in the legal community about effective ways to grow and manage your law firm.
Today in the Legal Mastermind Podcast, we have Kwame Christian, best-selling author, TED speaker, and founder of the American Negotiation Institute. Welcome back to the Legal Mastermind Podcast.
Hey, Chase, thanks for having me.
And of course, I have my co-host here, Ryan Klein.
Yes, Ryan, good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm loving the digs behind you.
Yeah, I got a bunch of random stuff back here. And a couple, you can't see them, and people listening probably won't be able to see, but quite a few negotiation books. And I have read a few since our first conversation. Good stuff. What a profession. I really do respect what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And today, I think the main topic we're going to talk about is, as a lawyer's role is to defend justice, how should a lawyer, or really anybody in a business capacity, have that difficult conversation with their clients or their employees or the community about race, injustice, and really everything that's going on in the world right now?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think timing is perfect for this conversation. I know when we first connected and talked about having this episode, we were talking about business negotiations and how to handle COVID. At the time, we thought COVID was going to be our biggest problem. But 2020 just keeps on surprising us. But yeah, I think this is a good time to have the conversation, and hopefully we can have an opportunity to provide people with some helpful tips and tactics and mental shifts that they can use to be more effective.
Sure. And I think one of the reasons we really, of course, before we started getting into this, we talk about what topics and what's timely. And we were already talking about, lawyers, a lot of times people in the community look for them for being kind of that beacon for justice in every capacity. And so, it's interesting to kind of know the take or what's going on or how this kind of conversation has evolved. And of course, it didn't start now. This has been something that's been going on for quite some time. But at this point, what are lawyers and law firms really doing to really take the stand that I think a lot of people are looking for?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Ryan. And I think, too, when we think about issues that relate to race and justice in the United States, these are touchy issues. They've been touchy issues from the onset, from the beginning of our nation, right? And so we're not going to, I think one of the most important things to accept and realize in these conversations is that we're not going to solve racism in these conversations that we're having today. We're not going to solve institutional racism either with the conversations that we're having today. But what we have to recognize is that there is something that we can accomplish in the conversation, and it's going to be different for different people. So if I'm within my organization, maybe my goal is to try to effectuate some level of change as it relates to inclusion and inclusivity of the diverse members of my law firm. Maybe it's about creating better pipelines for diverse candidates, things like that. Or maybe it's simply providing space for people to be heard and have the conversations about what's happening in the nation. But whatever it is, just recognize that there is something that we can do. And then kind of going to what both of you said about lawyers as leaders, the thing is, the community looks to us for leadership. Now, we didn't ask for that. We didn't ask them to be their leaders in many cases. But that doesn't change the fact that that's the way that people look at us in this situation. It's a really, really heavy responsibility. And lawyers have always been leading the way in various capacities, whether it's government agencies and politics or whatever it happens to be. We've been at the front of the line a lot of times. And so when people are looking to us, we have an obligation to try to put them in the right direction through our example.
And when you talk about leadership, it is sometimes common for lawyers to be on the forefront of changes to legislation and laws.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, again, thinking more realistically about what it is that we can accomplish a lot on the local level, especially when it comes to policy change. And so when we're having these difficult conversations with legislators, we have to be persuasive. These are negotiation skills. When we're talking to the stakeholders, we have to be persuasive. These are negotiation skills. And I think we need to start to think more creatively and more expansively about the skills that we have at our disposal as it relates to negotiation, persuasion, and conflict resolution, because especially in difficult times like these, those skills are going to be quintessential elements of our ability to lead effectively in times of difficulty.
I love how you're tying in negotiation. That didn't take too long, but you're absolutely correct. That makes sense. And so, speaking on that like a little bit, because of course we can tie that in, because negotiation is ways that you can get things that you're looking for accomplished or done. So when you're doing that, are you saying it more like how you can do it more like in your community on a society basis, or like directly with like local governments or like the legislators, or kind of both?
I think it really depends on your situation. It really does, because I don't feel comfortable prescribing specific targets for people, because everybody is situated somewhat differently. And so we have to think about the way that our skills could be best utilized, given our location physically, our location within our firm, our location position-wise within our community, and so on. And then we have to think about our unique contributions. Given my position and my skill set, where am I best suited to make changes, and then start from there. And it might be something really small. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have, is that people often stand on the sidelines because they don't know what to say or how to say it. That's the first thing. There's a skills gap. And then also they say the things that I can do are so minute, so small, that it doesn't even make sense for me to get started. And that's another one. And then I think probably the biggest one is, again, I kind of circling back to what I said earlier. Sometimes we see such a big issue and you say, it's too big. I can't conquer that. I can't climb that mountain. So I'm not even going to try. But we're not asking you to do that. It's about figuring out the small things you can do to create change in the world around you.
So I can actually bring in a real world example. I recently, like an hour ago, got off the phone with a client, very frustrated that internally the higher up did not want to make any kind of statement. And he was very adamant about making some kind of statement, saying something. Me and Ryan both are. We made public statements about standing with everybody. What in your opinion, what's the best way that person could get their point across without literally he's at the brink of almost wanting to quit his job, because this affects him like down to his core, which I'm sure it's affecting many Americans, many business owners. What's the best way for him to negotiate in the company what should be actually doing for the community and standing up and saying something? What's the best way to convey the importance of that without having that person shut down and shut off?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that people are dealing with across the country. And so my approach to difficult conversations and negotiation in general is called the compassionate curiosity framework. And so I came up with that for my book called Nobody Will Play With Me: How to Find Confidence in Conflict. And actually, breaking news for you, I am rebranding the book. So it's actually just going to be called Finding Confidence in Conflict: How to Negotiate Your Best Life. Because I realized that the people who were buying it, they knew me, so they understood the title. But other people, they're like, that's a negotiation book? Pass. I'm going to get Never Split the Difference. and so now I'm clarifying it. I should have talked to some marketing guys beforehand. But the compassionate curiosity framework is really simple. And it's the framework that I utilize when I go to different bar associations and do full day negotiation seminars for experienced lawyers. It's the same framework I use to talk to high level people at the Fortune 500 level who are negotiating 9-figure deals. And it's the same framework I talk to people who are out in the field doing social justice work, who have a nonprofit. And so the framework is intentionally flexible and intentionally simple, because I want you to remember it, because it's going to be the foundation for every difficult conversation you have, whether it's at work or at home. And so first step is, number 1, you are going to acknowledge and validate emotions. Number 2, get curious with compassion. And number 3, engage in joint problem solving. So acknowledge emotions, get curious with compassion, and joint problem solving. So let's take that framework and apply it in this situation. So your client is focusing on it from his perspective. Something bad happened. We need to do something about it. And when we feel really emotional and passionate about something, often we don't take the time to figure out what the other person feels about the situation. And this is the key of the root of empathy. And so in that conversation, what I would simply say is, since we don't know exactly what the emotion is, we can get close to it. Well, it sounds like you're not really interested in doing this. And then people, when they feel like they're understood, they're going to explain more. Yeah, I don't really feel comfortable doing this. I don't think that it's something we need. Okay, yeah. And it seems as though you don't feel comfortable doing it because it might have a bad impact on the business reputation or something like that. You keep on acknowledging the emotion and digging deeper. And then you start asking questions. So that's getting curious with compassion. We're gathering information. So what impact do you think it has on our brand in the eyes of people who are minorities if we don't say anything about this situation? And so we're slowly transitioning them to start to think a little bit differently. We're not forcing our ideas on them. We're asking questions. And with the questions that we're asking, they're open-ended and they require elaboration, but they're strategically targeted to pull the person in our direction. And then once you get all the information you need, joint problem solving, this is just the fundamentals of collaborative negotiation. So Ryan, you said you're reading Getting to Yes. This is Getting to Yes now. But we've avoided a lot of those emotional barriers that get in the way early on. And that's the problem with a lot of the difficult conversations. We don't even get to the point where we are able to, on a level playing field, just emotionally level, start talking logically about the situation, because one or more of the parties are so emotionally incensed that they can't process logically. By acknowledging the emotions, we avoid that emotional barrier, and so we can have higher level conversations.
Those are all great points, because I don't think it's a matter of acknowledging, like, is this injustice or not? Like, obviously it is. Like, everyone acknowledges that. But it's like you're saying originally, well, I don't know what to do. There's a lot going on. People are passionate about it, but it's like, where do I start? What if I can't protest? Can I donate? But is donating enough? And like, is that too passive? Sometimes it's 100% acknowledged and you know it's there, but it's how do you get started? Where do you where you feel like you're making a valuable impact? You can contribute in a way, and you shouldn't feel like be overwhelmed by what you do.
Exactly. And just think about the impact that would have. If you're able to get your company to a place where they're willing to make a statement, that's a win. That's a win. You just did something. And so that's why these conversations are so powerful. So powerful. You just have the conversations. And if you're able to shift the perspectives of people, that's the first step. Then we can start to shift the behaviors of people, and then we try to get them to commit to those behaviors that they started to implement as a result of these conversations. And just doing things like that, that's a great place to start. And one thing I tell my friends who are thinking about starting podcasts, they ask too many questions. They're just saying, okay, do I need this microphone? Do I need to do that? Do I need to do that? I say, listen, you just need to start, because your first episodes are going to suck regardless. Get those out of your system because most people just don't start. And so I just say, whatever you do, set a deadline and begin. And so with this, it's the same thing. If you're finding yourself stuck in a situation where you're struggling to take action, struggling to have the conversations that you need to have, take the time you need to prepare, but don't allow yourself to use procrastination as a tool to avoid the conversation. Sometimes we prepare as a tool of procrastination. We just over prepare in perpetuity, but we don't get started. So say, okay, I'm giving myself 48 hours. In 48 hours, I'm going to take some action. That day, I'm going to do something. And doing something is better than nothing.
And I think you make a good point with over-preparing and overthinking. And it's especially in this specific situation, you want to make sure to say something. Like, if you're going to say something, you want to say something, but at the same time, you don't want to offend anybody. And you also, if you're trying to say something, you need to say it.
Exactly. And we overthink it because, like I mentioned before, a lot of people sit on the sidelines because they don't know what to say or how to say it. And that's, again, why the framework is so simple, the compassionate curiosity framework, because it helps you to know what to say and when to say it for maximum impact. And if you say, okay, I'm in a conversation, I see emotion, I'm going to acknowledge that emotion. Okay, emotion's gone. Now I'm going to ask an open-ended question. I have enough information. Now we're going to transition to joint problem solving. Oh, while we're brainstorming, now I see another emotion, acknowledge emotions, right? It's super flexible and super powerful. So we just need to use it and get started.
And then as far as maybe some of the contributions, I know that we're talking about this June 3rd. the proactiveness from businesses has really started really in the past 5 days or so. Have you seen anything in the legal community specifically, really just, taking the stand and making, their commitment to the injustice? So one firm that I've seen is doing like pro bono work to represent people arrested unjustly for protesting. Have you seen or heard anything along the lines of actually like the actions some lawyers have taken?
Yeah, that's the one that I've heard the most. And I think that's a great one. I think that's a really, really great move to make. Again, I can't say specifically because honestly, between trying to run this business, manage my employees, dealing with the fact that daycare is closed, all of that stuff, it's been tough for me to keep up with everything. And I know that a lot of people are experiencing information overload. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of times the good stories just aren't shared as much. And so I know there's a lot more going on out there that I'm missing, but that's the one I've heard too, Ryan.
Kind of just goes back to, we were saying community leaders, specifically in the realm of law, social injustice, something that lawyers have kind of been tied into that all along. So it's just like, are people going to be looking at them for more action than other professions or businesses or people that contribute to communities? Is it something like lawyers should be aware of the possibility? Or
that's a really good point, because I think some lawyers don't see themselves that way. I mean, for us, we go through school. A lot of people are just like, yeah, it's a job. There are going to be some people who see it as a calling, like this is the noble profession, right? That's the way it's seen. But a lot of people just think about it as a job. And so I think bringing awareness to the fact that even though you might see it as a job, your 9 to 5, you use it to make money, whatever it might be, other people look at you very differently. And so if somebody is like, a hedge fund manager, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, that's the guy I look to for social justice reform. No, but oh, you're a lawyer. I wonder what you've been up to recently. I think it's a higher calling, and not necessarily like it's better than other professions. It's a higher calling in that other people look at it that way, because they expect you to do something.
I don't know if people relate to this, but imagine your stereotypical scenario where, you're in a restaurant, someone's eating a piece of steak and they start choking, hyperventilating. And then is there a doctor in the house? And it's like, if you're the doctor and someone's like choking, even compare the two.
No, I think that's really interesting because here's the thing. Well, I think they're, what's it called? The Good Samaritan laws. Some places you might be required, but let's say hypothetically you're not. People would look at you like you murdered that person, like your inactivity murdered that person. What? They're not my patient. I didn't have to do anything. Well, you didn't have to, but you did have to at the same time. Yeah. People are looking at you to do it. People look at you for leadership, and if it's not there, then it's almost like lying by commission versus lying by omission. It's like, oh, you didn't affirmatively say something wrong, but by not doing anything, you allowed a misunderstanding to go through. You knowingly let that happen. I think we're getting closer with these metaphors, guys. We're going to land on one.
Earlier you mentioned you have a webinar today. I'm going to say today because we're releasing this podcast on Friday, and the webinar will be on Friday.
Early, nice.
We're going to release this really early in the morning, so hopefully they can jump on or maybe see a replay.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. So we have a webinar today, June 5th. It's going to be at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be all about how to have difficult conversations about race and justice. And these are really tough conversations. And frankly, I struggle with them too, but I want to be a resource for people. So it'll be a short presentation, and then the rest will be Q&A. And people might ask, when does it end? I don't know, when the questions stop. And so we have a lot of people registered already. We'd love to have you. And even if you can't make it, if you go to AmericanNegotiationInstitute.com/justice, you'll be able to get access to that replay and access to a free download that'll kind of walk you through how to have these difficult conversations.
And everything we're speaking about today is really just like the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. Yeah, it really is. And again, it can be overwhelming when you start to envision the entire iceberg. When you think about all of the the intersectionality of the issues. We have race, poverty, the classes and different locations, how where you are situated within your community has a significant impact on your outcomes. When you consider all of these things that come together to create this hodgepodge of problems in our society, it's easy to get overwhelmed. But just focus on what it is that you can do today. And I think that's a challenge I have for your listeners. So think about what you can do either today or this week to push us in the direction of a more just and equitable and inclusive society. And whatever you choose to do, just know that is enough, but just do something. Yeah. Also, if you missed the webinar, you can catch the replay either by going to that link. That link gives you the access to the free guide, but also you could check it out on my podcast, Negotiate Anything. It's the top ranked negotiation podcast in the world. And we'll put together that episode and post it sometime next week.
Thanks for listening to the Legal Mastermind podcast. If you're interested in working with Ryan and Chase, please email mastermind@marketmymarket.com. Make sure to join the free mastermind group for growing and managing your firm at lawfirmmastermind.com. Ryan Klein and Chase Williams are the managing partners at Market My Market, one of the top legal marketing companies in the United States.